We are back with chapter 71. Believe it or not, we are up to 71 of The Chosen Journey with Big Money Grip, Steve Carsey, and the Chosen Lawyer. Steve-O, to start today's episode, I got a funny question for you.
All right.
Imagine this scenario. You being, at the age you are, I'm at the age I am, but imagine now if I told you you were going to be playing baseball right up until 2 years ago. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so imagine that. Imagine 26 seasons overall in baseball having pitched, 21 in the majors, combined with the minor leagues, and you went off and played in all sorts of countries, let's say Mexico, for example, and you ended up with 293 wins, 4,000 innings, 3,000 strikeouts. Pretty decent numbers, eh?
Over the long haul, it's really good numbers.
And I would be referring to which gentleman that recently hung it up? The one, the only, the portly man,
Who?
Bartolo Colon. Bartolo Colon. I believe he was drafted originally in the expansion draft with the Montreal Expos. No, I'm joking,
Yep,
but
yep, yep.
he was a Montreal Expo at one point or
He
another.
was.
This is when the Expos went all in and gave up a ton to the Indians, and the Indians just knew how to stock up their team back, and they still do. But imagine now, debuted with Cleveland in 1991, his last MLB season 2018, 4,000 innings. That's a lot of mileage on the arm. And you never really heard much about him getting injured. He was one of those throwbacks like to the days of Rick Russell, Nolan Ryan. I didn't even realize he was still going, but a guy that probably will not make the Hall of Fame, but still had a really good career, fun career. I remember when he got that one home run, remember, on his at bat there.
San
And
Diego.
and just a fun dude. Any Bartolo Colon stories to share with us?
No, Bartolo, when I was with him in Cleveland, was just a low key, give me the ball every fifth day type of guy. The one I remember is a start at Yankee Stadium where he had a no hitter, I think going into the eighth or the ninth inning, and ended up not getting it. But just a tremendous guy that took the ball every fifth day, competed his tail off, and ultimately stayed healthy enough to pitch all of these innings and get these wins and be on the mound. And I think that's important. I do remember. I can give you one story. So uh, this is just something where they found him in the Dominican, right? He was from this part of the Dominican, which is like in the hills, where there really isn't much. It's just farmland and all of that. And one of the scouts ended up going into this area and finding him, and he used to throw rocks and coconuts, and that's how he would keep his arm in shape, being in this area. And the scout ended up signing him, and I don't know how much money or whatnot, but that's how kind of he got started in professional baseball with you know coming over to the States and getting the opportunity, and then just kind of refining his craft. And not the tallest guy in the world, real stocky, short, strong, nice lower half to move you in the right direction for a pitcher. And again, just a really good teammate, and a guy you would want on your team every fifth day to go and take the ball and compete for you.
If this was the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, I think he would actually have a pretty good shot at the Hall of Fame given what the criterias are. But this is the MLB, and it is the hardest Hall of Fame in professional sports to get into for a reason. And we've talked about this many times. It's not the Hall of Good. It's not the Hall of Very Good. It's the Hall of Fame. And boom. And so, but I certainly hope, looking at those numbers, look at how many seasons, I hope there is some sort of plaque or acknowledgement for him for putting in this much time, because Steve, you're 48 years old and you're playing in the depths of Mexico. You're only doing this for the love of the game. You're not doing this for $10 million at this point. You're doing this, for a burrito and maybe a curvo, and that's about it. So this guy loves baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. He's always loved baseball, and that's kind of what he does. So kudos to him for such a tremendous, career, the longevity he's been able to sustain over the course of his baseball career and into his late 40s, mid to late 40s, I should say.
Now, this was the original topic that we were going to talk about and one that I wanted to address, but it's a little bit of a smokescreen because I had to get you all nice and comfortable because I had to. The second part of this is what went wrong. And you can sit and talk about a lot of MLB teams now that the trade deadline has passed, and the teams I thought were going to be buyers end up being sellers. I heard a very interesting conspiracy theory the other day. I love my conspiracy theories, right?
Yes, you do.
This one really makes sense. So now the teams I was going to hit upon were the Mets, the Padres, and the Cardinals. I'm actually going to start with the Cardinals of what went wrong. And I can trace this all now to one event. I really see this now. I really didn't think so, but I kind of got this. You ready?
Okay. Yes.
You recall the signing of Wilson Contreras, the catcher, right?
5 years, $87 million.
The man that by May or so was DHing for them, right?
That's correct.
Now, before Contreras got signed, there was a reason why they needed him, right? Because they just lost their icon of the franchise, Yadier Molina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Molina being Spanish for catcher. Like if you look it up, like they are the catching Molinas. This is how they're bred. And it's funny because there's Benji and Jose, but Yadier ended up surpassing both of them and being the greatest Molina of all time. So having Molina and being the leader and taking care of the pitching staff consistently year after year, they're winning. This was the team that I thought was going to win the World Series last year, if I recall correctly, as to my horrible predictions. But Pujols was going so well, and I got all swept up into the magic. But losing Pujols to some degree, they have lost him before. But can we trace this all back, Steve, to the fact that Molina retired and the effect and the void of what Molina left on his team? Because I think that this is when after hearing this and thinking about it, I think you put Molina on this team and Molina having decent numbers, but being the catcher he is, I don't know if this team is in the same position they are this year.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would love to know that answer if Yachty played one more year, where they would be. But at the end of the day, Yachty's decision to have his final year and walk away, and ultimately the Cardinals needed a catcher for whether it's short term, long term, and you know they saw what was going to be on the market. They saw, the direction that they wanted to go. That's always the dangerous thing about signing a free agent is you don't know truly what you're getting besides what you see on the field. You don't see, how he handles the staff. I mean, you can watch it from afar and see how he handled that, but you don't know the inner workings of what's going on with another team with their catcher. Um, you don't know, how he competes and he competes his tail off, but again, the handling of the staff, the pitch calling, the homework that needs to go in, the studying that needs to go in on a daily basis. How much is he in the video room? How much does he know about all of his pitchers and what pitches they throw and how they work and what the pitcher does when he's off as opposed to when he's going well. Like these are all little added bonuses that sometimes you wish you knew when you signed a free agent. And it's always nice to have, you know, somebody that you can rely on or lean back on to maybe get some information from and do your homework, because I'm sure many of these teams call other teams or people in, in the front offices, call people they know and ask about him. And is he going to be a good fit in the clubhouse? Is he going to be a good fit on the field? And then you make a decision from there. So, if they didn't sign him and they had somebody else, would that have been a better fit? If they didn't sign him and kept Yachty for one more year, would that have been a better fit? I don't know. Those are the hindsight 2020 questions that you can always ask. Like you can go back and say, what happens if the Yankees didn't trade for Giancarlo Stanton, right? What kind of position would they be in financially and do that? And that's going back a little bit, but at the end of the day, this is what they thought was going to make their team better, or at least comparable to what Yadi was behind the plate. Obviously, it didn't work out in the first year, but you don't know how the next 4 years are going to go. You don't know what kind of development that's going to be. And, that's why free agency is so hard. And putting a collection of guys together is so hard for them to gel. There's a component of chemistry in a clubhouse that helps a team win. And you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have chemistry within your players that believe in each other, then it has much more you know it's a much more difficult time to gel and to bring that together, no matter how talented that roster is.
You brought up the Braves the other week, and you mentioned about how smart they are as far as locking up players and everything else. Let's take this to the root, Steve. Remember that trade they made with Oakland in the offseason last year, right?
Yeah.
And they decided, you know what, we're going to acquire this catcher, Murphy, right? Great glove, known as really great handler of the pitching staff, maybe not the best bat in the world. He all of a sudden goes off and becomes Johnny Bench for them, right? And he's locked up. And then they just locked up their backup catcher, Darno, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who would be a starter on many, many teams. Having the two catchers work in tandem together, strong catchers, they'll have them both for at least 3 years. This is not an accident. I think that was a really smart move. And shoring up your catching position from a defensive and offensive perspective, look at their pitching staff. I would trace a lot of the Braves' success to having that in place versus having catchers where the pitchers are just, could be a great bat, but really scared to pitch to him, or really great defensively, but not much of a bat. The Braves have really shored up that position well.
Well, that's where baseball has changed with the analytics. You look at the analytics and you go for the bat, right? You want offensive catcher. Sometimes you don't think about the defensive part of it, of catching and throwing, right? Or handling the staff. And again, that's a philosophy of each individual team on how they want to do it. But I would say this: Murphy, like, yeah, his bat wasn't the greatest in Oakland, right? But at the end of the day, and no disrespect to the Oakland A's lineup, but you have a different lineup in Atlanta where he's probably getting more pitches to hit because they don't want to face some of the other guys in front of him. So he's just taking advantage of that, where, he just didn't get that in Oakland with the guys hitting around him. When you have a better lineup hitting around you, you're going to get more pitches as not a more powerful bat in that lineup, because they see you as the weak link, and that's just the way it is. They see, I would rather face and give this guy Murphy better pitches than get to the top of the lineup and face Acuna, Riley, Albies, and give him the pitches. So if I can try to give him the pitches and get him out, then I can face, these next guys with nobody on. But if he's taking advantage and he understands, and which he has, it just makes him a more complete player. And that's why certain teams are better than other teams. They just have a little bit more talent, and talent feeds into other guys playing well. That's just it. It's like a snowball effect. They say hitting is contagious, right? That's what it is. When guys in front of you start hitting, you get better pitches, and or guys behind you start hitting, you get better pitches, and you got to take advantage of that, and that's kind of just what happens. At the end of the day, again, I just think that the Cardinals made a decision on a bat first priority, and whether they're reaping the consequences of that right now, who knows? I mean, that can change in the next 4 years, but what you're going to get offensively from Wilson Contreras. That there's no doubt about that, and what he brings to the table when he swings the bat. Now, it's the other parts of his game that maybe you're not going to get, and you might still get that within the next 4 years, as long as you have the communication lines open and talk to him about where you feel as an organization that he needs to improve.
Then you got the Houston Astros, and they like the Steve Karsay philosophy, and that is we need the best positional players out there from a defensive standpoint. And their catcher was not a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, Martin Maldonado, but the pitchers all rave about him as far as the handling of the staff and everything else from defensive metrics. And Steve, and they're still out there, right? The one catcher that's being carried on a roster where he's the personal catcher, the personal caddy for the
Mm-hmm.
one pitcher. But if it's a placebo or it's real, if the pitcher believes he's in a better position to succeed with a certain catcher behind the plate, then by all means feed into it, right?
It's just one of those things where it's just like when you meet a group of people, right? You connect better with certain people in that group than you do other people, right? And it's just like a clubhouse. There are certain people you connect better. And whether that's a pitcher and a catcher, or a pitcher and an outfielder, or a pitcher and a pitcher, like that's the connection, and you just feel more comfortable in that situation with that person. Uh, so when a catcher and pitcher are on the same page and they think alike, it's just an easier working relationship than it is. And I'm not saying the catcher doesn't get along with the other pitchers, but they just don't have that synergy, so to speak, yes, of knowing each other and just having that conversation. I mean, you learn so much about who a person is just by through conversation, right? And that's what makes you feel comfortable. So when I used to talk to my catchers, certain catchers just got what I wanted to do. I would start a sentence and they would finish it, and it was like, oh, you're on the same page as me. And we would talk baseball and say, hey, here's how I wanted to attack this guy. And he would be like, we can go in early, away late, or soft early, hard late, or hard early, soft late. I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking with this guy, the way he swings. So, and you might not have that with another catcher. The other catcher may have a different philosophy or a different way of thinking about attacking a hitter. And then, whether the pitcher second guesses himself or goes along with the catcher and doesn't have conviction and intent in what he throws, it becomes more of an issue. Like when you're not confident in the pitch that you're throwing and you're not on the same page, and the catcher's putting down one and you want to, a fastball, and you want to throw a curveball and you're looking for the two, and you throws a one down and you shake off, I shake off, and he throws a one down again and I shake off, and he throws a one down again and I shake off. I'm like, no, I don't want to throw that pitch. That's just the disagreement in what pitch you want to throw. But at the end of the day, the guy who has the ball on the mound should understand he controls the game and should be comfortable with what he's throwing. And I think that's just the inner workings of pitching and catching. And it's just like position players on the field, second basemen, shortstops. They just have this synergy that they know each other so well, especially when you play in through the minor leagues and get to the big leagues. Which balls you're going to go after, how to turn a double play, what guys like, you know. Um, that's the chemistry part of baseball that I talk about that analytics can't put a formula on and get an understanding of how these 26 guys in one clubhouse are going to work together to become one.
And that chemistry is what's leading me to the Padres because I've been trying to put the root of where I thought the Padres went. And to me, the easy target was always Tatis Jr. as far as the suspension goes and his injury and just not thinking that much of the team as far as his actions last year and having to be accountable to his clubhouse. And, people were thinking, how is he going to react? How are they going to react when he comes in? And it seemed, he hit the ground running when he actually came back from the suspension at the start of the year. I think he started in May, if I'm not mistaken. He was a month later. So, and I can't say, and he had to change positions and didn't complain. And he seemed to be a model teammate. So I'm not going to put this on Tatis. Where I am thinking is from the catching position wise, I don't think they got very much out of there. And Nola was very highly touted. And, this brother, obviously the pitcher in Philadelphia. And is it fair to trace it back to if you don't have strong catching that this could really like slide the whole team because of the effect as far as on the pitching goes and where else, or is it really not fair to put it on one person? This is more of a team thing.
It's more of a team thing. It's not fair. I think that's up to the manager, the front office to understand what they have behind the plate. At the end of the day, there's conversations that go on with the pitching coach and the manager and the pitchers and how they, express their concern to the pitching coach, and that always, gets back to, the people at hand that need to make these decisions. So, it's not fair to put it on one person. It's on the players. It's the accountability portion of it. Uh, it's the accountability portion of it for the players that need to, you know, get together and figure those parts out. That's why you get paid a lot of money. That's why you get paid a lot of money to perform. And, everybody wants to perform at their best. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. But there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, I think, than, um, you know, what people actually really see.
And that's where with the Padres, you get that many superstars into one room, and people say, okay, well, they got to win because they have all the talent in the world. Like you're saying, it's not always talent. It comes down to how they're going to work together. And for whatever reason, they haven't not fully put it together, but they're not out of it yet. That's why they did not sell off,
Mm-hmm.
and they can still heat up right to the end of the year. The last team of what happened to them was the Mets. We touched about them last week. And to me, it traces back to a couple incidents of where this all began. It was, first of all, obviously the injury to Diaz, Edwin Diaz, their closer, signed to the highest contract ever for a closer. The team really was winning around him a lot and his music blaring. He was a big part of their success last year. Losing, your star closer, very deflating, even though you have Robertson, but having Robertson as a setup man to your closer, losing that depth piece didn't help. And I think the whole part about Correa and signing him, not signing him, building up all of a sudden that hope. I'm not saying Correa would have solved it for them, certainly, because I don't think they regret how things went down with him. But I think it kind of left sort of a void for everybody. How much, do people feed into this as far as in the clubhouse wise, where we're about to acquire somebody, we're not going to get them, the people really that concerned like the fans are, or are players operating on a different level?
Players have the pulse in the clubhouse, right? They know what's going on. They have an idea. They know what position they're in come the trade deadline. And listen, it's real. Players understand, like the Texas Rangers, like we brought up, right? If their front office didn't do anything, they would have been like, what are we doing? Why aren't we adding to our team with a chance to win? So players understand that, they might not, agree with some of the players. Obviously everybody wants the Verlanders and the Scherzers and all of that. But listen, at the end of the day, some of these smaller trades are really the ones that put other teams over the hump. I would just say last year, Philadelphia didn't make these huge trades, right? But they got Sosa, right? And they got one other player that helped them tremendously, to get to the playoffs and through the playoffs. So it's not always the top name guys that help you, but it's more of just the camaraderie and the understanding of the front of the players to the front office, that the front office knows we're in a good position and they're going to add to help our team win. It just gives you confidence. It breeds confidence in the players. And like I said, it gives you a jolt of energy knowing that you're getting some reinforcements in and adding to your payroll to help you get over that hump, so to speak, to get to the playoffs and just give yourself an opportunity to win a World Series, which, I think every player, dreams about when they, play this game from a very young age to the time you get to the big leagues. I know I did.
Isn't it kind of ironic? We're sitting here in 2023 and it's the Red Sox and Yankees saying it's really unfair. We have to play in the same division with the Rays, Orioles, and Jays. Funny how that kind of works out. And remember the times that it was always the Brewers and Cards. These things come in cycles, and you never know year to year. And that's part of what I love about baseball. And Steve, I got to tell you, I've never been so excited about a playoffs as I am about this year. Just we've had a lot of good teams and new ones emerge. I'm really curious to see where things are going to go this year. I don't think that it'll play out the way people expect it to, and it's gonna be really fun. We still got, and let's remember also, like you keep saying, there's a lot of baseball still be left here. Like we still got August and September, and a lot can happen in that time, even when you're leading your division by a million games. Just ask Mets fans.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it's just one of those things where I think it's more coming down the stretch with the wild card teams than it is with many of these divisions. I mean, the division that sticks out is Houston and Texas. That's still really up for grabs. Obviously, the NL Central with the Brewers. I think the
Reds.
Cubs are kind of in it, and the Reds are right there. And I think that's going to come down to. I think that's going to come down to the last week of the season. I really do.
Reds just got back two
The
pitchers. It's
Yeah,
absolutely, and the same
I
with the
think it's
Brewers.
coming
The
down.
Brewers are now getting healthier. Their guys are back.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's gonna be which of these three teams that doesn't have a sustained losing streak, right? It's about winning series. If you're playing a 3 game series, you're trying to win 2 out of 3. Like if you can just win 2 out of 3, and it's hard to do. But every time, that's kind of where it is for me. It's, win a series, win the week. All you want to do is go 4-3 every week. 3-3 or 4-3 every week. Easier said than done, but that's the goal. And then after 8 weeks, you play 8 games above 500. You're in a really good spot.
And I was gonna put the Phillies on this list too, but you know what? They're currently holding a wild card spot. They're more than likely gonna make the playoffs, and the Padres may very well as well. But I put them on this list because they were expected to be so head and shoulders above everybody with that payroll, that talent, and it'll be interesting to see when we come October 1st who's actually the division leaders, who's the wild cards, and I think a lot of the wild cards, like you're saying, are gonna go literally down to the wire, which is great for baseball. It's great for the fans. It builds a lot of interest. And it's that's why didn't see a lot of moves at the trade deadline, because a lot of teams said, "Hey, I'm still kind of in it." I heard as far as in Seattle, when Seattle traded their closer, the players came out and they were not impressed. They're like, "Hey, we're still in this thing, and you go and do this. That's got to be deflating from the other end of things."
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I just read an article where Cleveland brass, their front office, had to get on a plane and fly to Houston to explain their trades to the clubhouse of why they subtracted instead of added. Savali to Tampa, Bell to Miami. I think it was Rosario to the Dodgers. They added Syndergaard, right? But at the end of the day, they're half a game out of first place, and they're doing these type of moves. So it just doesn't sit well with the players when the players are, busting it for the whole year, and you put yourself in a position, and you're just not on the same page, maybe of thinking of, and again, front offices think completely different than players. Players think about on the field winning, add. Uh, GMs are held accountable to the owner about making money and looking at the long term and understanding their payroll and working around some restraints of what they're capable of doing and how much money they're allowed to add. So, I think that's where the disconnect is. Being on a coach and understanding it from the different side, I understand both parts of it. As a player, this is what I wanted and how I wanted it. As a coach and talking to the front office, this is how they go about things and what their constraints are and what they're capable or able to do, and trying to find the best players that they can add without busting the payroll and without giving away prospects that uh, they have moving forward. So there's a delicate balance between the two, and sometimes it's a disconnect between the two, the way they think, because there's so many other issues involved in decision making process.
We saw with Milwaukee. I mean, not much different than that Seattle situation. You trade your star closer. Players were a little taken back by that. And even I would throw out the Reds there, been so hot lately, that good young core. And man, they get a couple more pieces in there. That division is takeable, and they didn't do it. But people have to understand Cleveland, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, very different considerations than the New York's, LA's of this world. They operate on very, very different budgets. And, this is not, we could just throw unlimited money and eat dead money all day. It's not going to happen. Milwaukee's not going to do that. Cincinnati's not going to do that. They're not going to have $110 million in dead money and just band-aid it with more contracts. So, they operate on different levels. But with Cleveland, not Cincinnati, but in Cleveland, that division is so weak that even if you're going to make it in, chances are you're going to get bounced in the first round regardless, and that's probably what they're going to sell them on. I'm going to guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what those conversations are going to be, but you're right. Like, the long term is, can we win a World Series? And again, I go back to get in, get hot, get it done. Like, you don't know what can happen. In a 3 game series, you don't know. In a 5 game series, you don't know. In a 7 game series, the better team usually wins, but that's not always the case. Like, at the end of the day, you still got to play the games on the field, and they're not played on paper. And when you put guys out there that compete and grind it out, you just never know what can happen. You always see, these guys that you don't expect to be, uh, you know, the hero in the game, always come up in the right spot at the right time and get the big hit to put their team over the top. So again, at the end of the day, you just don't know. As long as you get in, you have that opportunity, and how far you go is depending on the players.
And on that note, we're going to come back next week because we had a topic on a few weeks back. I knew it would have a reaction. I didn't know it was going to have this kind of reaction. So, Steve, you often ask me, are listeners listening? Are they writing in? What are people's reactions? Well, I compiled a whole bunch of feedback for you next week. Our viewers write in, and they had very strong opinions for us.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it.
Careful what you wish for. You may get it. We'll see you all back soon on The Chosen Journey.